We're going to take a look at the beautiful, exciting new graphic novel published by BOOM Studios, written by Dana Gould, who, as I'm sure many of you in this room remember, came on stage as Dr. Zaius at our 50th anniversary celebration back in February, and totally stole the show, left Matt Reeves agape. And I'm also very happy to welcome back Dafna Pleban, who's the Proto Comics editor over at BOOM Studios, who is here for our panel discussion about the ephemera and merchandise and sort of expanded world of Planet of the Apes that lives on in comics. And I congratulate them both on this very exciting new addition into the canon of Planet of the Apes. So we'll talk about Visionaries, and I may at some point change the slides on screen so you can see a little bit of the things that we're talking about. And afterwards, we'll have Dana available to sign the book. So I hope you guys will stick around. If you didn't buy a book yet, the guy selling them will be outside for another 10 minutes or so. And we've run out of the large pieces of concept art, but we still have photographs from the exhibit that was up that spans most of the franchise. So you're welcome to take one of those with every book that you buy. So let's welcome up Dana Gould and Dafna Pleban. Woo! All right. Thank you, guys. Now, before we start, is this lighting okay for you guys?
The what?
Is this okay? Or would you rather have the full lights on?
Yeah. Lights.
Lights.
Definitely lights. Always lights.
There we go. All right.
Show off the money.
So I think before we can really get into the graphic novel, we should really start, Dana, with your lifelong appreciation of Planet of the Apes. And since we didn't get to talk to the real you, 50th, give us a sense of how important this was in your life, how you first fell in love with it, and how you grew up with it.
This is neither the time nor the place. I have to do that joke. I apologize ahead of time. You'll hear that at every panel. It's inexplicable, really. I first became aware of Planet of the Apes when I was like 5 or 6. You'd see the commercials on television, and my parents just said that I was completely unlike anything else. It just really galvanized me. And when I was 7 or 6, I guess, I made my parents take me to see Escape from the Planet of the Apes at the Milford Drive-In, which is where we grew up in Massachusetts. And that was the first movie I saw at the movies, I think. Escape, and then I saw Battle. And then I saw Battle in the summer of 1973, and then Planet of the Apes, the original, premiered on television the following September, and Beneath was the following month, and then it was a TV series the next year, and the whole thing snowballed. And it was, for whatever reason, it was my baseball. I was the perfect age at the perfect time to be into Planet of the Apes. I was 10 years old in 1974, at the height of it, when they had Planet of the Apes breath mints, and it was everything. And I just, I was an indoor kid. I was not a sports, didn't play sports. Psychologically, I'll say very briefly, I grew up in a family. I have 4 older brothers. And my dad, they're much bigger than me. They're athletes and hunters. And I was a nerdy little kid that watched Star Trek and read Famous Monsters. And years later, as psychiatrist, Years later, a psychiatrist said, well, naturally, you grew up in this environment where you felt that the world was upside down. It seems natural that you would have an affinity for Planet of the Apes because it was basically telling your life story. Like, well, I don't know. There's also Moses dressed like Tarzan being chased by King Kong dressed like Fonzie. But it meant a lot to me, and it never went away. Like, I loved it, and I was in Atlanta this summer filming my little TV show, Standing Against Evil, premiering Halloween there on the IFC, and they were showing it. Yes.
You're welcome to slow that down for the.
No,
Yes, thank you.
I'll slip it in. But they were showing Apes at a theater in Atlanta because it was the 50th anniversary, and the nerdy people on the crew was like, "Hey, we all get tickets. We're all going," and I was like, "Oh, great!" Like, I just saw it. But we went, and from the first frame, you just get hooked in again. It was, and it had a Planet of the Apes burlesque show at the start, so it was worth going.
Wait, did it take off the gorilla suits? Did it get the clothes then the gorilla suits?
They had it's so
Them
much
part
better.
questions.
They had scantily clad primitive humans.
Sure.
A tailor dude, a big gay tailor with a lot of tattoos, then some apes, and then dancing bananas. And I have the photos on my phone to show you.
We need
And
to
it
use
was
that as
good.
reference.
And it was good, and then the dancing bananas was like, yes! It was great, but from the first frame, I was right back in the movie. It was great. So I don't, it's inexplicable, but when I love Planet of the Apes, and when I get older and a little smarter, I was really into the Twilight Zone in high school. Although I'm a comedy writer, I always like, hey, Rod Serling's a writer, I'll be a writer. It's kind of cool, he did it. And so to have my name on the same piece of paper as Rod Serling's is really, means a lot.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's not like a summons.
Dafna, tell us a little bit about your entrance into the world of the apes. When did that happen? How is it that you wound up taking over this particular title for Boom Studios?
I tend to be a fake when it comes to Planet of the Apes. I came into it really late. I was already editor at Boom, working on a bunch of other stuff, and the editor that was working on the books at the time left the company, and I inherited his books, and so I had to sort of do a deep dive into what I was getting into. And at the time, we were working on 2 books. We were working on a book called Planet of the Apes, but it's not the Planet of the Apes from the films. It's set in the same universe, but it was set 1,000 years before when humans were just losing the capacity for speech. And apes had these beautiful modern Renaissance clothes, stunning ball gowns, and they lived in the Eiffel Tower. It's wonderful. You all should check it out. And what I really loved about the comic was it dealt so, and I didn't develop it so I can compliment it and then take ownership after the fact, but it dealt very specifically with the societal implications of an underclass and an overclass, and sort of the tension between how rights are slowly stripped away and how we're dehumanized. And then I watched the movie because Rise came out, and I wanted to sort of be completely brought up to speed. We were doing a Rise of the comic. Rise
You had not seen the original after doing all that work.
It was 2 issues in my defense.
You're defensive.
I'm Jewish, I'm always defensive. And so I was like, okay, you really are gonna have to buckle down and watch all of these. Because they weren't available on Netflix at the time, you had to buy them. And I got the Caesar head that has all the movies in there. I thought, if I'm gonna commit, I'm gonna commit to the bit. And I popped in the first movie, and I feel so ashamed for saying this. I watched it, and I was stunned. It was wonderful, it was beautiful. I really related to Taylor. He was this sort of like cynical, he wants to be nihilist, he wants to be misanthropic, but he actually isn't. And the tragedy of the film is by the end of it, he's defending humanity and is let down one last time. It's a great book on him. I wanted to be at the burlesque show. But I came out of it, and I don't know where my head was at when the credits were rolling. I was like, this is like a really good Twilight Zone episode. I went to Wikipedia, Figured out it was Rod. I came up to speed. I watched the rest of the films. My favorite is still the third movie. I've rewatched it again recently. Holds up. It's the best. And completely fell in love with the franchise. And I kind of had a 360 immersion. We were working simultaneously on this Planet of the Apes comic, Rise of the Planet of the Apes comic, and I had just started Betrayal of the Planet of the Apes, which is set in the more recent 1968 continuity. It was dealing with Zaius kind of bearing the first piece of human information. And so I just realized the breadth of this franchise and what it could do and how strong it was that it could be rebooted in a completely different context with completely different actors. And it's almost an inverse. It's an ape realizing they don't belong versus a human realizing they don't belong. And the message stays totally the same. And I think it's a testament to the franchise that every iteration that has been made, it's very hard. I mean, we see Star Wars, we see Star Trek, I see Star Trek a lot. But we see these franchises that jump mediums and are reinterpreted over and over again. And it's very rare that its core message stays so strident and so singular. And Planet of the Apes is, I keep coming back to the fact that it's about we need to dehumanize the people that threaten us or we won't survive. And that doesn't change the fact that the person we're trying to tear down is still a person with their own needs and wants. And it's so relevant now today. And so the fact that something that happened in 1968 can
You mean like there's somewhere today there's a
No.
malevolent
Never.
orange politician?
No, but this like, I wouldn't insult say this that way. Are you kidding me? My entire trauma in these last 2 years is like we're being defeated by stupidity. I just want someone malevolent and smart.
Right.
That's my message.
Hopefully Beto O'Rourke will defeat him.
And I'll get my wish.
I was gonna say, he's the head of it.
Yeah. There'll always be stupid people. I have faith. That is the amazing thing about apes as a vehicle to tell a message that it can be used as a Trojan horse to make different points and to deliver different messages. I mean, the amazing thing about the original quintet of films is that it starts off telling the story of humans and ends up telling the story of apes, and that your fealty flips, and you end up rooting for the apes, right in the middle, right in the third, which is and then in the new films it tells a similar yet different story, whereas the first one ostensibly was the primary color of the message was mankind's inability to control nuclear weapons, and then it refined to mankind's inability to control the science that we created and how we would be defeated by, inevitably in both cases our own hand. That's not easy to do, and the tent poles of the storytelling are in very, very deep.
Well, let's talk about the screenplay that this graphic novel is adapting, because you're like an encyclopedia of apes history. So walk us through a little bit about the adaptation from the book, from the Pierre Boulle novel, into the screenplay that Rod Serling wrote a draft of, and then why that wasn't used in the final version. I mean, obviously, a lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll defer over to you when I get lost.
You'll be so lost.
Pierre Boulle wrote this novel, Le Planet des Anges, which is, I believe, it's actually Monkey Planet in French. And he didn't consider it as one of his major works. Bridge on the River Kwai was his major work, which was basically autobiographical. And he looked at this as a lighter, smaller piece like Gulliver's Travels, a satirical novella. And in the novel, mankind falls from grace and loses its intellectual spark simply because they stop utilizing it. There's no science involved, and it's a very hard story to tell. We fall from grace because we stop using our brains. And
That feels very relevant.
Yeah. Then we get into the fiction part. And then Arthur P. Jacobs optioned the book, and his main theory was, from what I recall, well, King Kong made a lot of money. A whole planet of King Kongs, I'll make a ton of money. They went, I believe, to Rod Serling first, because he was Mr. Twilight Zone, and he was a well-respected writer. He had a garage full of Emmys, but he wrote science fiction, and Rod was the one who, as they say, broke the back and took this very intellectual novel, this satirical novel. It's not an action adventure story at all, and really made it into a 3-act structure. That the book does not have that at all, and that survived up to the finished film. I mean, the structure of that movie is all Rod Serling's. But the first draft of the screenplay was very much an adaptation of the book, in which case it was a straight satire. The apes lived in a big city. They lived in New York. They wore suits. They had makeup. They flew in helicopters. They had
nightclubs, which is my favorite.
They had nightclubs.
While you're saying that, I'll pull up a couple of images from the book.
Okay, yeah, they had nightclubs. They had cocktails. They enjoyed Grape Juice Plus. These are from the
I love
book.
that.
And Chad Lewis, by the way, who's not here, but Chad Lewis did the art, and it's really phenomenal. And Paulo Rivera did the cover, which speaks for itself. It's just great. And love. Oh, go back.
Favorite, the crosswalk.
Yeah. There was one. The movie title was mine. Love Patrol. It's the only thing in the book that's not Rod Serling. But he made this, and it's really interesting because one of the things that we decided, the screenplay, the main screenplay that we worked with was December 23rd, 1963. 4. December 23rd, 1964. So this is literally getting it in right before the holiday. Like, he clearly put off work on it. He's like, shit, I gotta get this thing in before everybody breaks for Christmas. And then there was a rewrite in March of 65. So what we wanted to do, the first thing that we agreed upon was, let's have this be, this is the movie that they would have made if that script got a green light. And they were making it in 1965 to be shown in 1966. And so when we have modern technology, it's modern technology circa 1966. So it really is an episode of Mad Men with apes and poor Thomas, not Taylor, in the middle of it. And
Less misogyny, though.
well, you couldn't have more. The misogyny and Lucius are the only things that date the '68 film. Other than that, it's really timeless.
Well, and it's to the human woman. Zira, she's not degraded for being a woman at all.
No,
She's
but
just a
the-
pesky chimpanzee.
Yeah, the most precious cargo we brought along did
Yeah.
not fly at the last screening.
That's why humanity destroyed itself.
Yeah, exactly. As the old joke goes, I bet she thought she was the botanist. Nope, just crack the seal on Operation New Eve and we'll see what it says. And that's what Serling did. Serling wrote this very brilliant, but it's not the movie that you are familiar with, because in keeping it in a modern city, with a giant population, it's very much a political thriller. The first act is very similar to the story that you see in the '68 film. The second and third acts, it's 7 Days in May. It's a political thriller. It's really what is the Ibsen play about Enemy of the People? The
Yeah.
Water. The Funky Water play.
I work in comic books. books, I don't watch
You're
movies.
smarter than I am.
Enemy of the people.
Enemy of the People, right.
You're
Yeah,
comparing
which
it to
now we all know is the
You're
press.
comparing it to 7 Days in May?
I'm comparing the tone of it to
Wow,
7 Days in May.
okay.
That it's society. This society is endangered, and they don't know it.
Yeah.
And the small group of people know what's going
That's
on,
true.
and they're meeting in these clandestine boardrooms, talking about this grave threat that's going on that the people on the street don't know about. It's very much a political thriller, and that surprised me when I was reading it and finally started to translate it. So in that sense, it's a very different story. It's a very different story. I don't know exactly why Michael Wilson came on. Probably just Rod did 2 scripts and went on his way, and Schaffner, by that time he was on board, and they brought in Wilson. And what he brought on board cannot be understated. But the entire reason the apes don't live in a big city was budgetary. But what's amazing is it changed the story so much. It really made the story an action-adventure story. It's a super Tarzan movie. And that's what made it completely fascinating to a 10-year-old kid. Like, I didn't know what the message was. And inadvertently, that's what I think made it so timeless, is that the movie happened, and there were factors involved that were not intentional that made it what it is.
I also find that, like, because they look so primitive in the movie, it's easier to watch it as a straight drama or action and not satire. The moment you put an ape in a suit with a hat, it's immediately commentary. It's immediately a political cartoon. We've seen that image before. And so in a weird way, because it was just too expensive to put a bunch of people with nice cars in a good city and film in a city and all that stuff, you made the Trojan horse, like you said, of this message more applicable, because no one's sitting there going, wait, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say about me? You're coming in completely defenseless.
I remember watching it. I didn't see the original one until it was aired on television in September of 1973, and I remember watching it. And at the end, when he ties Dr. Zayas up to the log on the beach, I remember, I was 9, but I remember going, yeah, how do you like it? And my brother literally going, yeah, oh wait. That's actually what we do. We do time.
Dafna, tell us a little bit about the way in which this came about from the Boom side of things. How are you finding new stories for Planet of the Apes, and how did you come to this one specifically?
This one specifically was a passion project of my assistant and then associate editor on the book, Alex Gaylor. He's actually over at DC now doing kind of similar collections and stuff like that. And he was sort of the true blue. He's the one that inducted me to the Church of Apes. And he put it on my desk one day and he said, Dafna, you gotta read this script. It's the original Sterling script. I was like, buddy, look at how many scripts I gotta read. This isn't a comic, this isn't something that's due, give me time. But I took it home that night and I read it and it was stunning. I brought up the nightclub earlier because I still think it's my favorite scene in the script. The kind of darkly comic, tragic moment of Thomas going on stage and being like, so you want to laugh at me? I'll tell you a joke. You know, it was just so unexpected. I always had this sort of perception of the past as less self-aware than the present, and I always forget that the past thinks the same thing about 10 years before that. So I didn't expect something so specific, but universal at the same time. And so I came back the next day and I was like, we gotta adapt this. We gotta do something. And so we actually sat with both scripts and we split them between us, and we broke out. At the time, we weren't doing graphic novels. We were doing 5 to 6 issue limited series, and that's it. And then we'd collect them later. And we sat down and we tried to break this into a 4 to 5 to 6 issue series, pulling from both scripts, seeing what would fit. And we realized we were doing this story a disservice. We were trying to create cliffhangers. We were trying to create action moments per issue. A single issue runs between 20 to 22 pages, comes out monthly, it's $4. You want to make that worth someone's time. But to do that, you functionally create a different story. To your point, there's not that much action. There's 3 acts, but a lot of it is internal. A lot of it is this emotional struggle. It's Thomas coming to grips with his situation. It's him trying to turn that frustration into something productive by teaching Nova. And then it's him coming to an understanding that there's no future for him here. That's not an action scene every 20 pages for 4 or 5 or 6 issues. So it's like, I want to do this, but it's just with what we were publishing at the time, which wasn't graphic novels, it just wasn't going to be as good as it could be, or in a way that it matters to me, which is the story. And we were already doing, we had just finished, I think, Beneath. We were doing Excel. We were about to launch Cataclysm, which is our ongoing series. We also already had something kind of in the 1968 era. So kind of sat that to the side, and we started doing graphic novels about a year or 2 later. And I was like, well, I got the first one, buddy. And I put together a pitch based off of the script, and I ran it up the flagpole and got a green light. And they're like, okay, so who's adapting this? It's like,
A clown!
I was just gonna give the script to an artist and like walk away. Like, isn't that what editing is? And no, I'm not that naive, but I did start asking. By that point, I had already become a huge fan of the franchise. When you become a fan of Planet of the Apes, you start to find out other people are fans of Planet of the Apes. It's like this, like sort of like low-key secret handshake. Like you either love it or you're like, I saw it. Change the channel. There's no other emotion associated with it. And so slowly, kind of all my friends are coming up. Oh, well, I know someone, and I know someone, and Dana's name came up. Crap you not, like from 6 different people. And there are various degrees of editors and writers and other creators, and like, you gotta get Dana, you gotta get Dana. And I was like, Dana's not gonna do comic books. That guy does TV. I'm like, no, like, where am I gonna find his email address? And then I realized I'm kind of creepy and I can find email addresses. Got his email address. I emailed you like out of the blue, and you responded, I think, day of, like pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is one. I'm really easy to get a hold of. I'll look at it. No, when you spoke to me originally, and your email, my original thought was like, okay, how much money am I going to have to pay them to let me do this? It was.
That's not how it goes.
No, it's not. But it's how it could have gone. You fool. It is. I was familiar with Serling scripts, and I'm a crazy Rod Serling fan. And what I did not anticipate was that the job would be, okay, what of Rod Serling's am I going to cut every day? Because in a graphic novel, and Dafna and the people at Boom were very patient with me as I learned the formatting of graphic novels. You get one action, you get 6 to 9 panels a page.
Yep.
4 to 9 panels a page. One action a panel. It's not, he drops the cup and goes and picks it up. No, he doesn't. He drops the cup, that's all that happens.
That's such a sweet example. I say he gets shot and then he dies. That's the example I always use. He gets shot in the first panel, he dies in the second.
Well, he dropped an exploding cup at the next panel. And whatever dialogue you have has to fit in a balloon. And Rod Serling is famous for dialogue, and he writes these amazing speeches, and you can't really, you've got to hack them up with a machete. And that was painful to do, but I felt in my arrogance that I was such a fan of his that I would rather have me doing it than anyone else. I felt like that I would at least strive to be as protective as possible. And the other thing that's interesting, I feel Eric Green is here, who wrote Planet of the Apes as American Myth, the book, who's right there. I just saw him. I feel weird talking about stuff. I'm just parodying, parroting out of your book.
Taking notes, all correct.
Okay, yeah. I'll see you in the lawsuit. Hello. That it's Thomas in Serling's script, not Taylor, and Thomas is a very different character than Taylor. Thomas is a prototypical Rod Serling hero. He is a mid-century urban liberal.
He's hot.
Yeah.
Well, the way Chad drew him.
He certainly is hot.
Well, I was super internal compared to Heston's Taylor.
He was Paul Newman was the prototype, and that's who he's. Taylor's a dick. And Taylor spends the first 20 minutes of the movie berating one of the other astronauts. He's like, dude, you're in charge of morale. This is your mission, pal. The Enterprise is surrounded by Klingons. Good, we deserve to die. No, Captain.
No one makes McCoy the captain.
Blast it. I hope they do kill us. The brilliance of the story is that here's this guy that hates humanity and is in charge of them defending it at the last minute. Sucker. But this is a very different story. This is, Thomas is Gig Young in Walking Distance. He's just a very sensitive, empathetic, decent, mid-century American male, and it's actually more heartbreaking to see him broken at the end when they come back. When they come back to the ship, and he's like, "I'm done. I'm done." It's much more heartbreaking than there's one scene in Apes that is really heartrending for Taylor, and it's not. Did I tell you about Stewart? It's the end when he's looking at the pacemaker and he's just talking about this guy that clearly meant something to him, and he goes, I wouldn't say it's like somebody I knew at home, but clearly there was somebody that was close to him that touched him, and he's thinking about it. In the graphic novel, he loses Nova. She's taken. He doesn't have her. And he gets back to his ship and he's gonna leave, and Cornelius and Zira find him in his ship, and he's just like, I quit, I'm done, I can't do it anymore. Like he just is broken, and it's really touching. It's a beautiful. I wish it's like, I want to see that in a movie. I want to see that acting.
Well, I want to pull up some images when we talk about designing the characters and how they're different, as you just did with Thomas versus Taylor. But before that, I did want to ask, what were some of the hardest things you had to cut? And also, how much of the length of the book is predetermined before, during that process?
We do predetermine. We have to for budget. We have to for where we're going to print it and how nice we're going to make the book and where we're going to spend that money. And also just timing and artist ability. So we did predetermine the length. What's nice about predetermining the length is you don't get precious and you find what's actually important for the story. And kind of the way that I comfort myself, even if Dana can't sleep at night, is that this would have been edited. Even if this version of the script had been filmed, it still would have been edited. It still would have been edited on set. It would have been edited in the editing room. I'm going to stop saying editing, but it would have been honed to its finest point. And on top of that, Serling also had incredible turns of phrases in the scene description, things the audience was never going to hear, things the audience was never going to see.
It's true.
And we got obsessed with some of the scene description, so while we may have had to cut some scenes and some dialogue, we tried to find places in captions we could put some of the observations that Serling was granting these characters that we would have no access to as viewers. So on some level, while yes, it was difficult to cut some things, I think A, it would naturally been part of that process, and B, it also gave us opportunities that the film never would have if we were so lucky to get it filmed.
Yeah, and he's
He's so good.
He's so good. Yeah, he's really good. There was, well, there's just tons of dialogue that you just can't fit it, that you want to keep. We made one editorial change, and that there was it's not Landon, it's Lefebvre is his name in the original book, and he does survive the hunt, and when they bring Thomas to meet him, it is the horseshoe scar from the movie, but then they have another brain surgery scar with someone else later, prior to what is going to be Thomas's lobotomy, and it looked to me like it was in the it looked to me like it made the first one seem like a vestige, like, oh, I forgot to take. There's a story in the Big Sleep where whoever adapted The Big Sleep, someone here knows, it's a big writer. It's
Raymond Chandler.
Thank you. He wrote it. Who adapted it? It was
Brackett. Lee Brackett?
no, it was
The movies?
I think it was Lee Brackett. I could be wrong, but I think it was.
yeah. Well, I think it was a big Southern writer. Whoever it is. They call. We can find. If only there was a device. Long story short, William Faulkner. William Faulkner calls Raymond Chandler and says,
Wow.
I'm doing the adaptation of The Big Sleep, and I don't know why the butler drove the car into the bay, which is the first reason Sam Spade goes to the house. If it's Sam Spade.
Marlowe.
Philip Marlowe, thank you. Sam Spade is
Same thing.
Yeah, it's multi-spelled, right? But I know enough. They were both played by Alan Hale Jr.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, he goes, I don't know why the car went into the lake, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out. So Raymond Chandler goes, all right, hang on, let me call you back. Gets a call the next day. Yeah, that's not supposed to be there. That's actually from another draft, and I didn't take it out. Because there's no reason for it in the story, and it has nothing to do with anything in the story. And this felt like Lefebvre's lobotomy looked like it might have been a vestige from another draft. And then at the end of the story, and I will tell you this because it's not in the graphic novel, because the graphic novel would have been the size of a phone book. There's a whole section where Thomas is done, he's quit, but he goes back to the city, sneaks into the city, finds Lefebvre, tries to rescue him, but he's lobotomized, and now he's being chased, and at the very last minute, Lefebvre walks into the helicopter propellers. and it just
They
seemed
needed
like,
action, man.
yeah, and it just seemed like it was a very long, closed-end loop that you could just at the bottom and move the story right along seamlessly. I will say that I murdered Lefebvre in a very good, rewarding way.
I actually really love the way you kill him, and I'm not being sarcastic in the sense that sort of when the kind of...
As a father, that moves me.
Well, it's when the gig is up in a way, where Thomas has sort of given up hope for legitimacy. Zayas is sort of closing ranks. He's sort of cleaning up the evidence of what's happened, of all the people he's talked to, all the evidence that humans can talk. And so the way that you've placed it, it's very hard to do a montage in a comic and make it feel like the momentum's still going. And the way that Dana put it in there, it really feels like that end of a political thriller where like people are being taken out, people are being killed to be silenced. Literally, he's already silenced.
Yeah.
He's dumb. But, and I think he starts to speak.
No, he starts to speak.
Yeah, and it's just this moment you see these like burly guerrilla guards just beat him to shit, and it feels very much like the mob.
His brain has repaired itself, and he's in the cell, and he just starts going, good, and the doors open, it's 2 guerrilla guards.
It's so epic.
And the next thing you
seems
know,
to be-
Jed's a millionaire.
It seems to me that that is the replacement of what in other versions of the story would be the fact that Taylor can have a child.
Right.
Or Cornelius and Zira in Escape.
Mhm.
That it's the one isolated incident of this intelligent man or the intelligent chimpanzees are non-threatening, but once there's an effect on others, then it really does create a polemic that they need to suppress.
Yeah, and it's and Nova in the book in this version it's a very different use of that character, and it shows you what can happen to the human population of this planet,
Yeah.
what is probably about to happen. So in that way, she possesses a much greater threat, but she's not, the girl the way she became in the film. And I'm sure you know, there was a version of they did shoot her where Zira goes, she's pregnant, and they cut it because they thought that they would get what was they call an X rating for bestiality.
Yeah,
I'm
that's right.
assuming,
Censor,
Eric,
censorship.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, censored.
I keep looking at her for approval.
Doing good.
That was my favorite scene also in this comic, and I know I keep saying that about every scene, but Dana has the emails of me sending you the picture of her serving tea and me going, this is the best fucking thing I've ever seen. My life is very boring.
Yeah.
But
That is the scene where he drops the cup.
it's beautiful, and she's offering it, and Zayas like pulls back like he's been burned, and that small act of her being able to learn.
You can read comics as fast.
I think it's before this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's that
Very
small act
microwave,
of her being able to learn this one is the sort of sea change. It tells him everything he needs to know the threat that Zayas possesses. Because
Amy Adams plays Nova. The helicopter budget of this film.
also in the previous page, just because it's a small thing I care, I love how Zira sits in that first panel. They're like, let's put
That's where I got it. He drops the cup.
and then it explodes.
Yeah.
So actually, let's go. Let's talk about the individual characters. First of all, how did you guys settle on the artist that was going to work on this in terms of the aesthetic of the work they're known for, and then tell us about the individual characters, how they were going to be different from what we're used to seeing.
Well, Chad Lewis, ironically enough, it kind of mimics the original film, worked with me on a Skull Island book. So he had a lot of experience drawing Kongs, and this is a planet full of Kongs. So I didn't realize I was aping that line of thinking, pun intended, and
Nice.
and I really enjoyed working with him. What he is so good at is this incredible, if we could go to like the symposium where he first speaks to all the scientists, he has this incredible eye for framing a scene. He can, it's amazing, this moment when he kind of walks on the stage and he's so small in the face of something so big. And even in the next, if you keep going to when he speaks to this moment with the reporters listening to a human speak, all of this stuff is something that he's so good at doing. He really takes you into the best part of a moment and the important part of the moment, either character or environment. And he's also so good at drawing these individual apes. None of them look like they're all wearing the same face with different expressions or that it's cut and paste. They all feel like individual people that have internal lives. And on top of all of the detail, on top of all the scene setting, what I really loved the most was his character work. I don't know if we want to show the end of the book, but that moment when he's looking up at the Statue of Liberty is why I hired this guy.
What do you think, Dan?
I mean, it's
I don't want to
not
spoil
a
the
game.
ending. No! Yeah, but make a just let me show you one thing. If you go back a page, and then we'll go to, if you don't mind. I think it's one, is it one more? Go back, this is it.
Oh, yeah.
This is what I meant by the 7 days in May aspect, where he's literally brought to basically the UN and like, this is the talking man, and then they meet and then there's another meeting in a smaller office, and then it's a bureaucratic story. But I love the idea of a human talking and just the shock that it would encounter. And this actually stole from the Mummy, the original Mummy, when Boris Karloff walks out of the thing and the guy just looks at him and goes, ah! That would be a great reaction of just an ape, which is, ah!
I also really love the teeth. Like,
Yeah,
they're not
yeah,
human
his
teeth,
teeth.
it's so good. So yeah, I mean, I went with him because I felt like he made me feel, even when the character is simple, or even when the background's simple, he knows how to invoke an emotion. More than spectacle, I think this book is character, and he's great with character.
And obviously the designs and Chad was right on board with this, because we wanted it to look like a movie that would have been made in 1965, we went to the first makeup test that was done with Edward G. Robinson, and we based the apes on that, and like, you know, extrapolate from here. Don't go to where they ended up, and don't make them photorealistic, which you can do now, because you're drawn.
Actually, if you go forward again, I can show you this. Oh, back. Sorry, keep going. Keep going. That one. That's his test page. This was the first page he drew. We had like half the script at the time, and I wanted a scene that had action. I wanted a scene that had environment, and I wanted a scene that had apes in clothes. And this beat in the last two panels, I got him the job. I mean, that moment is wonderful. That's character work with no words on the page telling you what to feel. I love this guy.
Yeah.
You have to love your artist because you stare at it every single day in various forms.
Yeah, and I feel terrible because his workload is so much more Herculean than anyone else's. Yeah, there's a scene earlier where the vet gets annoyed that they shave his face because he just had to operate on his neck. And he's like, why'd you shave his face? Didn't matter.
Tell us a little bit about how, Dana, you work with Chad in the process, or is it more once you have the script, Chad sort of brings it to life artistically with the artwork, or are you working constantly together on that process?
We work together a lot, but on the Simpsons, you'd write the script and then you get the animatic back, and then you do notes on the animatic, and then you do notes on the final color, and it was I'm so in awe of people that can do stuff that I can't, and that extended to the Simpsons too. There's really an effort made to make those people your partners, and not not the people that are working for you, which I never ever thought for a second. But with Chad, it was such a great back and forth process where his ideas would inform my ideas would inform his ideas, and it's a collaboration. Anybody that works in this or in animation, it's all a collaboration. Everybody is involved.
Especially,
Unlike my show, where it's all
well, the character design process very much, we started with Dana asking what he was picturing for Thomas, what was he picturing for Zaius and Zira. I don't know if we talked about the ape cops. I think we just gave that to Chad to see what he would do, and he came back with this Billy on the beat, like gorilla in a tight suit.
We said New York cops from the early '60s, and they had the double-breasted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just he turned in that ape. It's our version of Ape Soldier, but it's an ape cop, and it made you laugh and it scared you at the same time,
Yeah.
which is what apes should do.
I want to maybe go to the very end, not the end of the story, but the character design stuff at the end. But I don't want to give away the stuff in between. Heather, are you up there?
Do you need the page number? Maybe I just.
We only have 5 more hours here, so prep everybody.
Hang on, I'll just disconnect for a second.
But we did.
You guys can keep talking.
We did send Chad a lot of images of actors that informed Thomas.
Yeah, and Paul Newman, I think but he made something. He created his. Oh, Eric's disgusted. He literally wrote
Oh,
the
it is
book
fun.
on like the critical essays of Planet of the Apes, and I'm up here looking at it while I'm gassing on it. I feel awful.
Like I said, hot.
Yeah, that's a little more John Cassavetes, the blog.
And the top's more Paul Newman.
Yeah.
I also really love the note you gave for Zira of making her ugly. Not ugly so much as not human attractive.
Yeah, I didn't want this. I didn't want her to look cute
That is
from the
cute.
movie, and I didn't want a little button nose.
Yeah.
I wanted her to be kind of rough to a human perception of beauty, because that's the whole point. Is and that's again, eye of the beholder. It's like, well, it's what you think.
Yeah, like for other apes, she's like mousy, but for
Yeah, exactly. It's like what it has nothing to do with this culture.
So this was pretty quick. We got.
He was easy because you had the Everett G. Robinson film, so you just kind of copied it. That makeup was not designed. John Chambers had not come into that yet. I don't.
Ben Nye.
Thank you. Yeah. Ben Nye, who, as we all know, played Sam Spade in The Big Sleep.
And then for Nova, you were very specific of not the sort of Hollywood bombshell, but more of the sort of natural.
I believe I said, let's try to make her loincloth not look like something Gene Roddenberry approved.
There, that was the compliment. You're like, that's it.
Yeah, that it would kill you.
Oh, these are the cover roughs that we worked with Paolo. We had a bunch of different ideas that kind of, some were action, some were montages, and at the end of the day, I think what we all really wanted to see was like literally 8 madmen.
Can I ask a question? Do you mind if I ask a question?
No, go for it.
Okay, because I'm getting.
Would you like to use the mic so everyone can hear your question?
Please, with my mouth, and my mother could hear in New York. But I don't even know how to ask my question. Who does this look like? Who was in the Planet of the Apes? I'm trying. I'm gonna kiss your ass right now.
Actually, or Ron Harper.
No, it's not. It's
Or Mike?
yes, Francisca. I said
Put
Dukakis.
the name out, yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you very much.
He was also Longstreet, the blind detective.
Yes, that's right.
He was also in,
That was
Yes.
the end of the day on a
Yes.
Friday.
Valley of
He
the
run
Blind.
yourself to the
That's
fall.
right,
I don't know.
that's right.
Blind detective?
Yes.
Get out of there.
Yes.
Very good.
So this
Yeah.
is definitely a good time to take audience questions, and then we'll
Sure.
we'll do a signing at the end.
Yeah.
Where does the name Visionaries come from?
I think we kind of wanted to get a name that if we wanted to explore other ideas of Planet of the Apes, there's been a lot of both aborted reboots, there have been sequels, there have been unproduced scripts. One of my favorite things actually was, we talked about this, I always wanted to do a one shot of all the endings Sterling wrote, where he got increasingly annoyed by notes. And at one point, the Statue of Liberty has a big middle finger in the air. And you could tell that was just sort of like, is anyone paying attention, or are you just putting me through this? And I want like 5 different artists just to draw that over and over again.
I wanted Thomas to see it and go, my God, they had a Statue of Liberty too. No, you Claude. And then Alfred E.
That's another Visionaries. But we wanted to create a title that if we wanted to kind of explore other ideas of Planet of the Apes, we had a branding that would let us really, we're all fans, so we were always kind of looking for the next thing. And this felt broad enough to be a promise, but specific enough for the book. So a very shallow reason.
It's a great title, though.
Pursuant to that, are you thinking of doing an adaptation of Adam Ripken's Planet of the Apes movie from 1988? He wrote a script that was going to be produced.
Was it produced?
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it wasn't.
And that was a pre-Schwarzenegger one, correct?
Yeah.
Is that available online? They all run together. I've read so many unproduced
I
scripts.
can email it to you if you want.
I won't say no.
Adam Ripken is on it.
No, I'm not. But I will adapt it for you.
You're gonna have to. It's like Highlander. I just painted a target on your back.
Okay.
Are you waiting for the 50th anniversary of the live-action Planet of the Apes to start doing graphic novels around the series?
We do graphic novels around the series. Yes, Planet of the Apes of the.
Planet of the Apes.
The 1968 one. We do. We have a lot.
The 1974 TV series.
The TV series.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry. I think we've played actually a lot in the canon from the TV series as well. A lot of our books that are set, we call it the 1968 canon. We draw across the TV show. We draw across a lot of fan theories. We're not subtle, so there's some of that stuff already in our comics.
Okay. Because we need an Urko series.
Urko.
You have Ursus, which is fantastic,
Oh, yeah.
and now we need Urko.
We need Sarek versus Urko.
There's this one story in Tales from the Forbidden Zone where you sort of go into Urko's home life. You see him trying to be a good dad. It's amazing. And so full of potential. I always love it when a character becomes really three-dimensional. In fact, a lot of those stories would make for great,
Every villain thinks they're the hero.
Exactly.
So didn't the TV series fail? Am I wrong about
it
that?
depends on your definition of failure. It got made, so that's
Yeah,
a
but
huge
then
boom.
it had no
It's in one
following.
season. It
Yeah.
did one
Do
season.
you think that?
No.
Excuse me.
He did
Excuse
half
me.
a season.
Well, half a
They
season.
didn't
whatever.
air
There was a
it. They didn't air it.
So-
13 episodes.
Yeah.
So
That was animated.
don't you think with what is known now, it could be improved today and people would watch it? Because people don't seem like they can get enough of Planet of the Apes.
I actually think that there is a way to do it. Basically a lot of these series, they would just do The Fugitive. And Planet of the Apes, the TV series, is basically The Fugitive.
Mm-hmm.
They go from town to town, and they have an overarching goal, but really they're just going to town, and they meet Joanna Pettit, and she's blind, and she's being cared for by a nun. And then the next week the Hulk would come through the same town. and that was the original premise of the Night Stalker TV series. He was just going to be searching for the victims of Janos Skorzeny and going from town to town and meeting Joanna Pettit. And they changed it to the Monster of the Week format. I think that there's a better.
Can it be like The Simpsons, a homebody, a family?
I would like to do for Planet of the Apes what they did with Battlestar Galactica. I think I would do it. Yeah. And I know a way to do it really expensively.
I will say, what's interesting about the sort of Monster of the Week episodic format is it kind of creates a villain to defeat every week. But now TV, we're so into serialization. We're so into letting it unfold across 6 to 8 to 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And I know I'm tooting our own horn, but if you do want to see some really good serialized, like Planet of the Apes, we've got these 2 series. One is just called Planet of the Apes, and I call it Game of Thrones meets Planet of the Apes. And it's very much the tension between the human apes faction, and then you start to get hints of mutants, and it's really cool. And in Cataclysm by...
Is that on TV now?
No, it's a book series.
Oh,
It's a comic
okay.
series.
I'll get it. Sounds wonderful.
And then there's the Gabriel Hardman Kranevechko series that's Beneath, Betrayal, Exile, and then Cataclysm, which is 12 issues, and that's 1968, and very specifically this political thriller of someone uncovering the truth about an ape uncovering the truth about humans, but even more uncovering the truth about mutants manipulating their politics. That a lot of the tension that you see in Beneath the Planet of the Apes is being fomented by an outside party. And so I do think there's something, that kind of trilateral tension.
That's why Ursus does that big speech where he
Yeah.
says it's fake news.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Even Ursus is smarter than him. Literally. Amy, and that is not the stage for it.
I guess, did you edit Cataclysm, the
Yeah.
early issues and stuff?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you very much for explaining what happened to the moon. Thank you.
That was the pitch. No joke. Gabriel calls me up. We're going to meet each other at like ECC, and I was going to take him out for dinner or something. He's like, "We got this wild idea. We don't think Fox is going to approve it. Can we just like pitch it to you, and you can tell us no, and we can go on our way?" And they pitched it to me, and I was like, "Fox is 100% going to say yes because they don't care." And low-key. But at the same time, it's a 1968 canon. The canon is closed. The canon that is alive, that still needs to be added to, is Rise and Dawn. So they're like, it's not that they don't care. They're like, dude, Josh Izzo, who was the consumer products head at the time, had the same exact question. It's like, I've always wanted to know what happened to the moon. So we came with an answer to a question he was scared to ask, and then we turned it into this epic political thriller, which is Apes in a nutshell, taking something really interesting and then making it boring with feelings.
For anybody who hasn't read it, it's
That's
really,
awesome.
really amazing, and it fits completely within the continuity of the films. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
And it's beautiful.
The artist is Damien Cusero, and he has this uncanny ability to draw the apes you remember, but it doesn't feel like a human wearing a mask. It feels like an ape. It's the anatomy's weird. It's really good.
When you say the canon is closed, how does something like the Star Trek crossover work within a? I mean, because that does actually use characters and events from the movie.
Well, I can say from a franchise perspective, the way that it works is it's not in canon for either Apes or Star Trek. From a nerdy Dafna perspective, Star Trek has parallel universes, so in a heartbeat it could have happened in any of the Star Trek universes. And in Planet of the Apes, nothing that happens there contradicts what we've seen in the film, and the planet blows up, so there are no consequences. It's a closed loop. So at the end of the day, it totally works within canon if you want it to be canon.
And I love the device of explaining how Cornelius and Sarah Milo
Get out.
get out. That was so clever.
They didn't go with my idea, mainly because it's bad. But Star Trek has a species called the Preservers that pick up humans right before they emoliate themselves, or like survivors of species. And that's how they explain why all aliens in Star Trek are bipedal and humanoid, that they all came from this, Earth was on the brink of collapse. They pulled humans, they see them through the galaxy. So mine was at the end of Escape, at the end of Beneath, they pulled apes, and you get 8 Vulcans and 8 Klingons and 8 Kirk. And they were like, no. Absolutely not.
Has anyone else here noticed that you've never seen Dr. Zayas and Dana Gould in the same room with you?
That's actually not true. 2 of the leading Zayas impersonators are.
My true question is, since this is so different from Serling, the version he wrote, you say he kind of wrote it and abandoned it,
Yeah.
and then the film comes out, it's a huge success. Do we know what Serling thought of the final draft?
Well, I'm assuming he loved it. He was, by all accounts, and this is another reason, he was by all accounts a great guy. You know, it's just the nicest thing to know. He was like, yeah, he was, you never hear a bad story about him. I have photos of him, when I worked at The Simpsons, I went down to the Fox photo library, which is one of the first things that we did.
Oh, we did it the day after the election.
We did it the day after the election when we weren't feeling apocalyptic at all.
Then we went into a basement.
Yeah, we literally went into a bomb shelter. But there were photos of him visiting the set and like smiling with Kim Hunter, and I think anybody who has run a television series as he did, you have such an appreciation for anything that just gets made. It's like, hey, you made it. You know, it's like, hey, it got made. Way to go. Yeah, and he got credit, and there was an interview with him in the first issue of Marvel's Planet of the Apes magazine from '74, where he speaks about the film very fondly and does say, like, You know, the dialogue is Wilson's and the structure is, but the structure of the piece is all mine. But I'm sure he would like. What's not to like?
So he was no Harlan Ellison.
He's no, God rest both men's souls. He was, but he was only 5'4".
Yeah.
Or 5'5". Yeah.
And a smoker.
He so certainly liked it enough to answer your question. Liked it enough to work on the sequel initially. They wound up not using his ideas, but he spent months back and forth with the producers trying to come up with ideas for the second film. But I'm curious because you mentioned, Dana, the Planet of the Apes magazine, and you were so kind to mention the book that I wrote. And
by the way, this is Eric Green. He wrote Planet of the Apes as American Myth, and if you're a fan, you really need
It's
to go
really good.
online.
I've been digging through it since you sent it to me, and it's the best part of my day.
Yeah.
Yes, great, thank you. Well, one of the things I did for research was I went through the old Planet of the Apes magazine and I went through the letters page because it was the only way. There weren't detailed audience surveys. It was the only way to get a window in what was the Planet of the Apes audience at the time.
Right.
What were they looking for? What were they responding to? Now there are so many more avenues to hear from fans. So I'm curious, when you're approaching Planet of the Apes stories that you're shepherding through, what do you think your audience is looking for? What are they reacting to? What are they getting excited about? And in your definition, what makes a good Planet of the Apes story?
Oh man, I think at the core, so the kind of bland answer is like almost two audiences of Planet of the Apes. There are the people who are familiar with the modern reboots, and there are people who are familiar with the classic films. And with both approaches that we talked about earlier, there's a core moral thread in both universes, and that is, even if you're on the brink of destruction, recognizing someone else's personhood is the most human thing you can do. Not human, because the apes are people. You can't deny
Humane.
but it's the most honorable thing you can do. And in every Planet of the Apes films, be it the reboot or the original, you have characters come to an understanding of each other. You have Zira and Cornelius and Taylor. You have Zira and Cornelius in the third movie. I'm blanking on the doctors.
Milo?
No, the human doctors.
Played by Bradford Dillman.
So he had a great turtleneck, but they come to
Well, it's
us.
1973. Everyone was issued a turtleneck in 1970.
Well, I'm rewatching we were having 8 movie nights with some friends, just for fun, and we.
Stevie is the girl.
The girl, she was a mutant in the second movie.
No,
So now I'm
And she
watching
was
her.
Liza in the last two.
Yeah, well, no, and now I'm on watch for that. Like every time I'm gonna watch an Apes movie, I'm like, oh, there she is. She's got great hair
She's
still.
friends with Brian.
That was Arthur P. Jacobs' wife.
I'm discovering that on like the 4th or 5th rewatch. I'm not putting these things together. Like that's how observant I am. But at the core of it, all these films are these two characters who are ostensibly on opposing sides, that are ostensibly evidence of each other's destruction, come to an understanding and come to understand each other's personhood. And that's what I look for in a good Planet of the Apes story. There can't be these black and white villains. There can't be abject evil. The person that threatens you, the biggest harm, the biggest thing that threatens whatever stakes the characters has just as much of a right to the planet and to that moment as our main character, be it ape or human. And I think that holds true for the reboot, and I think it holds true for 1968, and it's what we try to find at the core of every Planet of the Apes story. And so that's what I look for emotionally. You can achieve that in a lot of different ways. We just did a Kong on the Planet of the Apes crossover, and yeah, we have Ursus riding a dinosaur and shooting guns, and that's all fun, and it's all the promise of comic books and the things that you can do. But at the core of that story, it's this human native from this island that has been isolated from what's been happening to the rest of the earth, and Zira trying to help each other out because no one else will. In the reboots, like we've done a Dawn of the Planet of the Apes comic, it's about an ape and human character realizing they have to find another way to survive because killing each other is not something they can live with. And so that's something we try to look for in every version of the story. I think it's something you find in Visionaries as well.
Well, yeah. Rod Serling was an incredibly moral human being, and the Twilight Zone is morality tales, And odd that Planet of the Apes is very nihilistic, the ending. But the heart and soul of those stories are they're morality tales, and war for the Planet of the Apes. I mean, it's kind of like, let's tell the story of Moses through the lens of Planet of the Apes, and it works. There's a deep morality, and I don't think it's an accident that in this current era in which we live, in which it's we are being forced to our moral fiber is being tested, it's not a coincidence that the internet there's suddenly all these Rod Serling memes that show up. There aren't a lot of memes popping up from Boris Karloff's Thriller, but there are a lot of memes of Rod Serling coming up.
I also think now that we're kind of talking about morality and
Wouldn't it be terrible to be trapped in a restaurant overnight? No, I don't know.
it doesn't have AC, absolutely. But I do think it's morality free of religion, and it's morality free of a higher power. The only higher power in all these films are on self-destruction. And so there's a lot of characters coming to a piece of their own action or understanding the actions they've taken. And I do think that's something that was probably really radical back then and is still radical now of, is there morality without religion? And we're seeing that it is. I think all these stories have this heavy Luddite fear of science, of science stripping us of our humanity, and so forcing us to define ourselves with an understanding of the world. I think both eras of films are terrified at the breadth of our understanding, and by understanding the breadth of our destruction. And so it's trying to carve what it is to be moral, knowing there's no God to destroy you, and there's no afterlife. There's just this here and now, and this is all you get. So it makes the resources they're fighting over more precious, because there's no do-over, and it also makes the fact that evil goes unpunished more harrowing. And I think we're experiencing that right now as a society, of we're seeing people who are evil going unpunished, and we have to come to grips of, is there morality without power? And I think both films really explore that deeply.
A couple of them. It's also Moses dressed like Charlie. Yeah. King Kong dressed like Moses.
That too.
Okay, so we should probably over to Skype. So we'll set this up, and you guys can come up, and there's some Sharpies, this is such a gorgeous graphic novel. It's such an exciting new version of the story to read. I loved it, and I'm so excited that we live in a time and place where there is a company like Boom bringing stuff like this.
And I would like to publicly thank you for letting me be a part of it. At the end of my career, I'll have a shelf of things that were really important, and it'll be a couple things, and this will be one of them. But, my album, and that, and a couple other things.
Pictures of your children.
No, that's my life. My career shelf is great.
This was an incredible experience. We've been working on this since the election, quite literally.
Yeah, it's funny. It was the day after the election, and we were all stunned. But it shows you we were so worried, and everything turned out great.
They both turned out great. I really hope you guys pick it up and check it out. I think Chad and Dana make an incredible team, and they will let me show you the ending, and it's so beautiful. It made me cry, and I've read it a dozen times. So,
is that from War that was cut? Is that?
Quite possibly. Or just apes trolling down the freeway.
What is that from?
Oh, wow.
That would be from War. Yeah.
oh, I thought you guys brought something.
No, was that just something? There was that shot in War that they didn't use, but it was in a foreign trailer where you can see Vegas in the background.
Do you remember there's a couple of really nice shots of them almost getting to a beach?
And they're all
Yeah.
they're on the 4 horses.
Yeah.
So it's
That might be good, yeah.
It just looks like the 99 you get out of the grapevine.
Yeah, it does.
That's funny. I used to go to school up there. One of the schools I went to was up there.
It looks like I moved to Fresno.
And then USC. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, God.
Thank you, everybody, for coming down. And